But when people kind of see themselves as I'm an engineer or I'm like an accountant, it limits them. So part of my inclusiveness and my belief in them is to expand their roles.
Hi, I'm Shannon Lucas.
And I'm Tracy Lovejoy.
And we're the co-CEOs of Catalyst Constellations, which is dedicated to catalyzing innate change makers to accelerate positive change. This is our podcast,
Move Fast, Break Shit, Burn Out,
where we highlight catalysts that are creating amazing change in the world. In this season of the podcast, we're diving deep into the skills that make catalysts successful. And I'm super excited to have my ultra catalyst friend here, Sean Kitzmiller. Welcome, Sean.
Happy to be here.
Sean is traveling a diverse career as a leader, designer, technologist, and innovator. He's a former startup junkie, a freelancer, and a current Fortune 100 troublemaker. At Sean's core, he's a catalyst who synthesizes complex human-centered challenges, insights, and concepts into elegantly simple solutions. He's won awards, he's received patents, he's spoken at conferences, he was recently honored at TIAA's Inclusive Leader of the Year. His flow is empowering people from C-level to interns to realize the art and science of the possible. Currently serving as design strategy lead, focused on human-centered design and emerging technologies, primarily AI, to fight the retirement crisis in America at TIAA. It's so good to have you here, Sean. I'm super excited for the conversation.
So am I. All
right, let's jump in and start off by hearing about how you relate to the concept of catalyst.
Yeah, so I relate a lot. It's something I think I'm built for, and I do mean that by built. Like I think I could do this. Could be a debate on like whether you're born with it or not, but I think I was blessed with a lot of great leaders early in my career that just threw me in the deep end, that sent me off to foreign countries, that put me on stage and, sink or swim. And I didn't know any better. Just like, okay, this is the way it is. And also the diversity of challenges. And even today, even before I picked up your guys' book and like cross paths, I was trying to understand myself and, the corporate, like you need a one pager. And so I do this Venn diagram and I'm reflecting on the stuff that I do. And I often get pulled into things that are just weird. But so looking at strategy and engagement and culture and storytelling and innovation, and even like leadership cohesion, like how do you build a great team? And so I arrange those circles and I go, what's in the middle? And the word catalyst, it came in because you're acting on something to create something better. And so catalyst definitely resonated, and thought it was kind of this. I was kind of a little bit felt like an outlier. And then when I crossed paths with you guys, it's like, oh my goodness, this is it. So I'm very grateful for you to kind of, legitimize this weird, cloak of being a catalyst.
Awesome. And back at you, because I know that you were already supporting the catalysts in your sphere and are committed to doing so. So thank you for that important work.
Yep.
All right, so we'd love to understand one or two of the essential skills that have made you successful as a catalyst. And maybe, I know storytelling is important to you, some stories of how they've helped you, or maybe there were times when you failed when you didn't have those skills.
Yeah. So I like this pairing of words, radically inclusive. And that's I think, because you hear a lot about inclusivity and the importance of diversity, and it almost borders on buzzwords, but I've lived it out. Like when you go through, like my background being educated in design, you kind of think you get a little bit of like this, oh, I'm creative. And then you see, I was in this creative workshop and they had professional admin in there, and the amount of creativity that came out of her was just amazing. So that burst the bubble of like, oh, I have some cornered the market on creativity. Everybody is creative. We just put so many things in the way that just shuts people down. So I believe in people, and I think one of my skills is is to infuse that belief into them, even if they don't. I think like one of these identities, we wear a lot of identities, and people I think get trapped by them instead of empowered. I just mentioned like Catalyst is a very empowering identity, but it's just one of my identities. I'm a spouse, I'm a father, I'm a volunteer, I'm all these things. But when people kind of see themselves as I'm an engineer or I'm an accountant, it limits them. So part of my inclusiveness and my belief in them is to expand their roles to like leadership. Like you're a leader. It might not say like you may not have this fancy title, but you can lead something. I did a hackathon where I asked this fresh out of school, 20-something-year-old, to basically set up the entire ecosystem for people to hack with and to run workshops and to educate them. And he's educating like these software engineers. Like that's a tough crowd. That is a very tough, critical crowd. They're just wired that way. And here's this young guy up there just owning it, and just gives me goosebumps to think about that. So whenever I can, I create space for people. I believe in them, and then I watch them shine, and then I cheer them on.
It's fantastic. And there's so many follow-up questions for me. How do you, I mean, that's in addition to your day job piece in a way. And I'm wondering how you see the people at any given time that you want to tap for those things, how you're connecting the dots to set them up for success when it might not be obvious really to either. I mean, it might be intuitively obvious to you because you believe in them.
Yeah.
That's what I hear from the start, is like the belief in something in them.
Right. Yeah.
But like, how do we help people who might not have that same intuition or fearlessness of putting you both in that position? Are there ways to set them up for success to build these inclusive opportunities?
Yeah, I think there are, Shannon. I think you got to create space that's safe for them. You got to get to know them. It's hard to like, take a stranger, but I mean, there is some intuition too. You see something in them, and sometimes that path to building a relationship is pretty quick. But I think I just innately believe that it's in them, and you have to set the conditions. So whether that's, to be vulnerable yourself and share, like, I may come across like the people will like see me as an extrovert, and I'll get up stage in front of hundreds, but I'm not wired that way. Like I'll go afterwards and be in the fetal position. So you be a little bit vulnerable, and you say, yes, I may appear fearless. I'm not really fearless, but I'm fearless enough to challenge the status quo. And I see that in you too. Like come on this journey, or just connecting them with someone. You sense what their missing piece is, and you connect it with another person that's maybe like them, but a little bit further down the path, and just connect the dots for them personally. I learned something from an intern. This is an intern, like she made this amazing amount of change on her campus by like taking on the whole institution. And I was just in awe of her. And I was like, how do you do that? Like, how do you climb that mountain? And she goes, well, I do it one life at a time. Like,
Nice.
like I'm getting chills just saying that.
Totally.
Like that's, so you just have to figure out what the person needs, what really sets them on the path to their full potential. And whether that's your belief in them, or connecting with them with someone, or giving them a stage, that's what you do.
Follow-up question to you, because that vulnerability, the space making, there's an investment of energy from you into that person that you're talking about. And as we were setting up for this conversation, you were like, and one of the things I struggle with is like, I also hold on to all of my ideas for a really long time, and that power gives me strength, but it also has a dark side. I'm wondering how you balance the energy, like how many of these people are you cultivating at one time? How do you like set them off and be like, now it's your turn to bring someone else along on the radically inclusive journey as well?
Yeah, I think I love the idea that I model it, and then they pick it up, and then they pay it forward. And I do see that sometimes they need a little nudge. I use I am a lot. Like I am like, I'm in a meeting or I'm in some like that's a great idea. You should share that. Like, just gentle nudges that have them, make that next step and make that connection. But the energy, I'll be the first to say, like in your book, like burnout, like self-care, like that's been a struggle for me. And I would not have made it without like a core group of people like around me. I got a couple of people, I call them like my, these are my on my own organ donor list. Like if they ask, you can have a kidney, like because you get in dark times, dark spots, especially these last couple of years, and the people that believe in you refuel your energy quite a bit. So always get energy from giving it, but you also have to have that core group as well too. So just being vulnerable. It's not a full battery all the time. So yeah.
And I just, my final point on this one, I just love the amplification power. Like a little bit of belief in someone can just
Yeah.
unlock so much power. Yeah, Tracy, you have a thought?
Something I love in that answer, Sean, is that implicitly you're fueling others.
Yeah.
Right. That if it,
Right.
that it sounds like, how do you touch all these people and fuel yourself? And you're like, well, there's people who are doing that for me,
Exactly.
Right.
which then
Right.
shows that it's not just amplifying their voice and how great that is for, the organization in the world, but
Yeah.
then you all are battery packs for one another in witnessing and amplifying one another, which is cool. And I've never heard anyone on voice on the program. So thank you. That was really special.
Of course. Thanks
All
for
right.
asking it.
Do you have another skill you'd like to share?
So thinking, not that I'm thinking about thinking, but thinking. So I've been blessed by some great leaders, and one of them taught me, like, don't fall in love with a methodology. Don't get in love with the dogma. Like, this says I should do this, and so I'll do this. But what you want to pick up and build across your career is your toolkit. Like building a great toolkit of how to think, how to see the world. Doing this right now, there's a framework called Pestle that kind of lets you understand the world a little bit better. It just gives you boxes like, political, societal, like technological, to enable you to think. But sometimes it's challenging your own patterns. I mean, we're just like, we got lazy brains. Like we just like wash, rinse, repeat. We park in the same place. We take the same route to work all the time. I think we're just wired that way. Conservation of energy, cave person type days. So you have to interrupt. You have to interrupt that. You have to bring in your own disruptors, and like a reverse mentor. Just someone who's. I have one. I have a couple actually. I think most of my mentee relationships get quickly blended into just a two-way street. So they help you think, like they help you feel too and grow, but they'll see the world differently, and that's an awesome, I think, success factor for any catalyst is to not fall in love with a certain way of doing things, but to constantly build that toolkit.
Is there a time when you didn't do that and that was painful, or was there a time when you're like, because I did that, I was successful, that you can illustrate?
Yeah, sometimes, despite all the kind of analytical, I think, aspects of that, building a toolkit, like framing a problem, sometimes it is just intuition. It's just gut. It's just there, and so that's both powerful and also dangerous, because you have these insights, or you have these problems that just wake you up at night. I had one recently where we're in the retirement space, so we're thinking about people's lives across decades, across, maybe soon we're going to have even more people living to 100, and we as humans aren't great at thinking in decades or lifespans. We're good at like thinking about what I'm going to do today and tomorrow and the weekend. So I've also fueled my energy through music and going to concerts. And I promise I will weave this story together. But I had this like waking moment where it's like, we're talking about transporting people across decades and making them feel, and us being empathetic to it. And the one thing that does that is like music. Music can transport you. You remember your first concert, you get uplifted, you're just thinking about that. And you remember details, like where it was, when it was. And so I had this thought, like, what if you represented a life as a soundtrack? And of course, like 100-year life, like what if you did, in practical terms, what if you condensed that to 100 seconds, like 100 seconds of life? And I could not shake that idea. Like that is a powerful, gripping idea of like, what does that sound like? What is the soundtrack of that? And is it life sounds? Is it like baby crying and doors opening, or is it more cinematic or more orchestral? And so, and then we're in the fight for retirement security, this lifetime income that we offer. And so you think about security, and that last and this is the emotional kicker. What if it's not secure? Like, what does that 100 seconds sound like in the last 20 seconds when you're not financially secure? And I don't have to play that. I don't have to necessarily kind of compose that. There's not going to be one right answer. It's going to be an individual answer to how you interpret that. And it's just a powerful thing. I've recently, formed a band of weirdos. That's what we call ourselves, as people that are half of them are Catalyst. So it's like, how do you manifest that idea or other ideas about using sound and music to evoke kind of emotions in a corporate world? So we're still figuring that out. But going back to the kind of two sides of the coin, that is an idea that I could not act on. Like I had to, that like consumed me. And in that is the trick, because I had a lot of stuff to do. I had a lot of challenges to wrestle with in my space. And luckily that one kind of connects. I'm even using AI, to compose music for that. So, because I'm not very musical, but you run into that challenge of like, how to shake it. And some of those ideas aren't going to live, and they shouldn't live, but they're your babies. Like that's the big challenge, because we love our babies. And anyway, so
are we gonna, because you sent me one iteration, I'll say, of the 100 seconds of sound for 100 years of life. Are we gonna get to put a link to that in the show notes?
That one, give me like a couple. This is another like Catalyst dilemma, at least mine, is like, you can always be better. You can always be better. And so
it's
I want to
so
iterate.
Powerful,
I want to iterate.
Because let me connect the dots back to the question, because what you're doing, what I hear you talk about is, how do we help people imagine in a gestalt sort of way what 100 years of life, what that journey might be like. And you brought tears, like it made me teary what you did. And it's because it's there's joy, as we were talking about, but there's a wistfulness in it, and like how that ending sort of, lingers on, and what that might be like. And you get to be like, oh, that's intense. And then if you can connect that, now you're helping people connect those dots, which is what you were talking about. You're using different techniques to get different outcomes with the people that you're working with. You're not married to like the traditional design thinking approach here. So I love that, and I would love to share it. The other thing I want to touch on is the mentee thing that you talked about. Like in the Catalyst Leadership Trust, we often now bring in Gen Zs and millennials with our partner Marty, because how many of us who are helping to set the strategy and navigate the business do have time with Gen Zs and millennials who have very definitive opinions and probably a lot more experience with things, particularly like AI. So we did the intersection of Gen Z and AI in September. And so I'm wondering, because all of that sort of comes to your Venn diagram of the reverse mentees, the AI as an example, and bringing together the different approaches. Like, what advice do you have for Catalyst leaders to meaningfully engage mentees or their own reverse mentors in an intentional way that doesn't feel what's the word? You know, it's like that feels authentic, that they're really listening and not just like ticking a box in terms of oh yeah, well I had a conversation with a Gen Zer.
Yeah, well, I am such a big believer in authenticity. It is hard. I mean, it's hard to fake it. Like don't fake it. Like just be authentic. And so I hope in that space of being authentic that and I know this of Catalyst, and I hope of everybody else, that you have kind of this confident humility. Like you know yourself. If you've been around the block, kind of you know yourself, but you're humble, and you know that there's still a lot that you don't know, and that space creation is critical to be filled by Gen Z, millennials, younger people. Again, kind of getting back to identity and labels, but it can be anybody of any experience range. Or again, please don't get yourself trapped in the assignment of labels in terms of identity. Like I can't learn anything from that admin professional. Some of my best connections, like in this world, are admin professionals. Like they're amazing. And so I think have that mindset that you can learn and you need to learn, and there's so many sources of that. I think if you're in any kind of position of power or authority, a lot of times you can create these special projects, these, or an event, hackathon kind of things. That's what I do a lot is you create the opportunity to open your eyes to who's going to step into those spaces. Not everybody's going to step into them, but be hypersensitive to the person that asked the great question on that meeting. Like follow up with them. Like that was a great question. Let's talk. Like, and then pretty soon, if you go into it with the mindset that you're not the Yoda to teach them all the wisdom of the world, like you're just curious. You're just curious about them.
Totally. Yeah.
And you'll be blown away. One
final point that I hear you saying, which I would love to make explicit, is this isn't your point. There's the concept out there of the personal board of advisors. Like you have your 4 people, right. They might be your organ donors, like whoever that board of advisors is.
Yeah.
And setting an intention about having that board be radically inclusive. So, yes. Like maybe we use labels as a shortcut, but it's like, I don't just want Gen Zers. I want people who've had a different life experience. I want people who have different professional backgrounds or whatever that is, and bringing my curiosity constantly.
Right.
Amazing. All right. I have to ask, what is the biggest challenge for you as a Catalyst leader?
So many people have, but maybe not all, have seen Ted Lasso. There's this metaphor used, like be a goldfish, because a goldfish has a 10-second memory.
That's me. That's totally me.
I'm not a goldfish. And it's like, that's a constant kind of great reminder and great little story of like, okay, be a goldfish. You watch any great athlete, they miss like 3 shots and then they're still taking the 4th one. To me, you still have that, like, again, it probably goes back to the emotional connection that you have, the identity of like, I made that story, I made that presentation, I created that event. So I'm like interwoven with who I am, which, it's much more healthier to think about, okay, that's a role I play, and it's not who I am as a person. It's just hard to sometimes recover from that. So it's hard to be a goldfish. is one of my personal growth challenges as well. But again, it kind of like circles back to having a great circle, having a great circle around you. So it reminds you of the value that you do have, and that the growth mindset that's so important. I have one little micro story. Again, a lot of my micro stories are born from interns. And so this intern, he's like a D1 lacrosse player at Marquette University. And I asked him to do create a presentation on the secrets of a great team using his athletic team. And he used words like love, and he even called it out. It's like, you're probably not expecting a 19-year-old to be on here talking to you about love. I'm talking to you about love, because that's what our team does. And to this kind of goldfish moment, he said, when we're on the practice field and a ball goes out of bounds, coach, we'll stop and we'll have a moment of clapping. Like, the team will clap that mistake because it gives us an opportunity to learn. And that's just so brilliant. Like, we don't do that in the corporate world. Like, we're either move on, or we're like, that's the red spot. That's the, like, what the heck went wrong? We don't typically see that as a growth mindset kind of opportunity. And he also said, just to counter that point, is because we may not lead the country in scoring, because that's somewhat out of our control, because we're always playing someone. But what we will lead the country in is high fives.
Nice.
Like,
nice.
Freaking brilliant.
Want to be part of that team. Yes.
Yes. Right. So stories like that kind of do help with my weakness of like, failure. Just to remember that. I mean, I give workshops on growth mindset, and I'm telling you, it's also my kryptonite. So, just continually reminding and build the muscle to learn, move on, grow. It's awesome.
Thank you for sharing so vulnerably, and just to, point out, like, what a beautiful moment that you created this space for him. You identified his innate, strength, I guess, is the word that I want to go to. And like, what the power is of you creating space for someone to lean in a way that I don't think we would have seen 10 or 15 years ago in the business world. So thank you for cultivating that. All right, sure. Tracy, over to you. Rapid fire.
Rapid fire, Sean. Are you ready?
Sure.
All right. What is one thing that you do to be ready for a big meeting?
All right. So, clarity about intent. And especially, so a lot of times we have, the intent, what is a kind of intellectual, analytical pursuit. I want people to learn this. I want them to agree to this. But I really try to be clear about the feel, about the emotion, the Maya Angelou, they'll remember how you feel. So a lot of times in a meeting sense, that gets lost. So I try to always go into a meeting with what do I want this particular audience to come away with from a feel perspective, and that is also goes to inclusiveness. When we talk about intent, this is one of those things that like sticks with you across decades. I was meeting with the COO of a major hospital system, and it went great. Like, he bought into the program. It's like rocked it. I came back and shared that with my CEO, my boss and mentor. And he's like, yeah, great. But do you know why that meeting didn't achieve the intent that you wanted to? Because the chief nursing officer wasn't there. She wasn't there to hear that from the COO. So again, that's one of those like non-goldfish moments, because it is like buried in my brain, like where I messed up. But it is also, I've used that as a tool too, when you think about a big meeting and the intent is to get the right people there.
So I'm hearing a lot of intentionality, and then I'm gonna out you a little bit. I don't know if this podcast is a big meeting for you, but I did love when you shared with us earlier what you did right before coming to this meeting. Do you mind sharing?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I got this from I think another podcast that you guys hosted, is the walk up song. Like again, I mentioned music is important, so yeah, there's this song that many people may have seen it in the Into the Spider-Verse Spider-Man. It's called "What's Up, Danger" by Blackway, and it's just this like, you just get in the face of your enemies and just tackle the world like. And so I just listened to it like 8 times on my drive in. It's like repeat, repeat, repeat. So that's all jazzed.
Your intention, you know your core outcomes, you know the emotional experience you want to convey, you know who needs to be in the room, and then you just pump yourself up.
Right.
Awesome.
Right.
It's a great formula. All right. What is your favorite way to spend a free day?
Live music.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Do you
If I
get a
could
lot
go
of
to
time for it?
I have made time like that. That's been my my exodus of the pandemic. Mental health is I didn't always go to concerts and stuff, but since the, I don't know, last 2 years, I've probably gone to 30 or more concerts. Of all types, all diverse music. I mean, these are artists like, you might call them Catalyst. I don't know. They're like giving their gift. They're like giving their gift, what's passionate to them. And so anytime I can go to live music, whether it's, a guy with a guitar or, big band in the arena, I do. So that's just my emotional connection with music.
What does that do for you?
Well, one thing I will buy 2 tickets anyway, like, even without arranging or coordinating with anybody. So one thing it does for me is connection. And I've gotten to go to, I have 3 daughters, so I've gotten to go to amazing musical venues and concerts with each of them, usually individually. And so that's a bond. It's a great, because we're going through a shared experience. And whether it's an artist they really like or an artist that I really like, kind of sharing that. So connections one, and just inspiration, just feel good. Like it's hard to put into words where it's like an emotion. But I was reminded when I started this journey and back into the thing of live music, that you literally feel it. Like you feel the music. And yeah, that's a big part. So I always leave happier. So.
Like it does, it like opens up our receptors, our feeling. I totally get that.
Yeah.
All right. Who is your favorite famous Catalyst, alive or dead, and why?
Well, this isn't the kiss up, but I will say, are you guys famous?
Totally famous. In our
minds. In our minds, we're famous.
Best-selling authors, like,
Well, thank you for that.
Yes, you're my favorites. I did think about this, and this is a person I don't really know. Like, I don't know if they're a good human being, but Richard Saul Wurman, he writes, he's written, I don't know, like 80 books. So one of the pinnacle books for me is called Information Anxiety. And he's an information architect. He's like the prototype of information architect. And so Information Anxiety was just a phenomenal book of like, how do you see the world and how do you depict it graphically? Follow the yellow brick road. How do you give instruction? So he's created these guides and stuff like that. And then this is what he probably is most, well, I don't know if he's known for it being famous, but he founded TED. So he founded the TED conferences and hosted the first like decade of them. And they did TED Med. He did the medical version of it. So he's like this kind of renaissance. I'm projecting catalytic, kind of bestowing him as a catalyst just based on some of these things, but it's been meaningful for me.
I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, as we wrap up this super fun conversation, do you have a call to action for our listeners?
Yeah, it's been built and probably into this whole conversation, but this concept of virtuous cycles, like, and I've refer to it as hacking your happiness. And one of the best ways I've been able to hack my happiness is by being a giver. So it's free to give. Like, you just have to have intention and attention to it, to give appreciation, to give connection, to give like I said before, belief, to give space, to give credit. And I'll say this, like, that may come across very altruistic, but it's totally win-win. Like, you're basically giving everything that you want, and by giving, you get what you want. That's not always the case. Like, you have to be selfless. Like, you give for the sake of giving. I'm just saying that there's a bit of a karma to it. Like, I think by being a good person, things come back to you. But just the act of giving is a pathway to happiness. So
I love as a callback.
Go do that.
Yeah, as a callback, and maybe this is not a connection you're making, forgive me, but I love the idea of radical inclusivity as being a giving reality too, right? Like, inclusivity has become such the word of like, I have to for the business, and so instead of thinking of it that way, I'm thinking of it like, this is a gift to me.
Right.
To pull you in, it feels great, and it's a gift to all of us that's going to happen. It's it comes from such a different place if that's a starting point.
Yeah, totally.
I love it. Thank you for that gift once again.
And it's renewable too. It's like you talked about energy, like that's a renewable source of energy. So you're feeling down,
right?
Yes, right.
Yeah.
You feel down, you've had a bad day. Like, don't feel sorry for yourself. Go give something to somebody.
I love it. Amazing call to action. And here you are giving to us, and we are grateful. Thank you for being here with us today, Sean.
Of course. Thank you. I'm very grateful for both of you.
Oh, thank you. And thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to learn more about how to accelerate positive change, go to our website at catalystconstellations.com.
And be sure to check out our best-selling book, as Sean mentioned, Move Fast, Break Shit, Burnout. If you have other catalysts in your life, hit the share button and send a link their way.